All right, a quick little trade update as the window officially opens today. Look, there's going to be a lot of breaking news updates, and this is probably one of the first to come out in light. We have Joe Richards requesting a trade to Port Adelaide. So, for whatever reason, we couldn't keep him at the club, couldn't get him over the line. Is it because our initial interest wasn't as, I guess, enticing as what Port Adelaide offered? The longer contract was probably a telling tale in the story, and I guess Joe Ridge probably sees through it. He probably sees that he's more wanted and will probably get more game time opportunities at Port Adelaide rather than Collingwood, which, if you look at it, take your Collingwood scarf off and look at it from a neutral perspective, he probably does have more opportunity at Port Adelaide. I've always said Collingwood are gonna, excuse me, are gonna double down on Lockie Schultz next year, and if Jamie Elliott, Bobby Hill, Bo McCreary, and Lockie Schultz are all on the forward line, you have to beg the question: how does Joe Richards get into that team? And while he's played midfield before, he's not going to be a midfielder next year, Joe Richards. So it's unfortunate. He's requested a trade, but this effectively will help our case for the desire that Collingwood have to acquire Dan Houston. So I imagine with Gold Coast and the John Noble conversations, we're aware that Gold Coast are having conversations with Collingwood before Carlton, before North, because of what they want from us, which gives us first dibs at that first round pick being pick 13. And it obviously skews up because of the academies and the compensations and the father sons. So if we can get a handle on that, then we will be the front runners for the Dan Houston trade. And we just have to be careful that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot like Carlton kind of have with Port Adelaide, asking for too much for John Noble from Gold Coast. It seems like we were asking, I'm just looking at an article here from John Ralph. Collingwood had asked for pick 13, 23, and 29 back from the Suns as they give up a future first and John Noble, which is we would win that trade by far and away, getting 13, 23, and 29. 23 being an early second and 13 being a a first rounder, and then 29 in the second rounder as well. I think that is a little bit too unrealistic when John Noble is the man they're chasing. So we will have to give up the future first next year because of or we are willing to give up our future first from next year because that Tom McGuan pick will eat that up. So we'd rather get a bunch of future seconds, if possible, from other clubs so that we can utilize it in that way, in that regard. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of this whole trade. It's quite messy, but expect the Joe Richards trade to give us a further, I guess, an upper hand in the trade conversations for Dan Houston. I imagine once Gold Coast get what they want from Collingwood, Collingwood will hopefully receive that first rounder in pick 13, and then maybe even a second rounder if we send back that future first as well. So rather than 13, 23, and 29, maybe we end up sending John Noble and that future first for 13 and 23. Perhaps that's something we do, and we back ourselves to finish higher up on the ladder so that future first going back to Gold Coast isn't as good as what pick 13 is right now. That's what it could look like. A bunch of situations. And just quickly talking about the backline stocks, we've spoken about Adam Tomlinson briefly. Sam Frost has pledged his commitment to Hawthorn, saying he's not going anywhere. Tomlinson seems like the perfect stopgap right now. When I say perfect, I mean it's really all that's available on the market, and he can be that Jordan Roughhead replacement where he plays a couple of years while we find someone for the longer term solutions. And forward line, Ollie Lord, not a lot of chatter there. I've got some mail on some other forwards who we have spoken about, but I don't want to disclose anything just yet, so we'll hang tight. But seems like something's cooking in the backgrounds for a key forward for the Collingwood Football Club in 2025. So for those who don't know, Scott Lucas is the player manager for John Noble, and they represent Phoenix Management Group, and just talks about why John Noble requested the trade. And while we sort of know what happened, Scott Lucas suggests, you have a player that's played 60 or 80 games in a row that's committed for the finals, so job security suddenly becomes less secure, doesn't it? And that sort of planted the seed for potential change for John Noble in the future. Therefore, naturally, a level of anxiety exists in a player where they thought it was going well and all of a sudden it wasn't going well in reference to the final series in 2023. He says, is this where I see a long-term future for me, because I thought I was going okay, yet the biggest disappointment in my career has just unfolded before my eyes. And it does take a little bit of work to get back from that, because it is a really challenging thing to happen for you. Noble was also left out of Collingwood's team in early rounds of 2024 before he went on to play 20 games. Lucas said doubt crept into Noble's mind about how secure his place is in the team, resulting in the 27-year-old requesting a trade to the Suns, which would also put him into closer proximity with his family. Certainty, doubt creeps in for any player. Not that you think you're going better than you are, but perhaps you thought you were a little more secure in your environment. So we get what is the picture is painting there, and God, this sickness is killing me. Anyways, what we know from that is Noble's had a good year this year, and while we may think his position is secure at Collingwood, previous trauma and anxieties around being dropped, blindsided and dropped, has caused this seed to grow. And Noble said, well, I'm going to go to a club that wants me, will pay for me, and sees value in me and won't drop me. Let me go to Gold Coast, where they have to seriously consider giving up picks and paying a bigger contract for me. That will give him a sense of security, job security, when somebody is, I guess, sourcing out for you, and that being Gold Coast. So that's where it all lies at the moment. I'm sure we'll have plenty more updates. We might even get double uploads at this point, because heaps will unfurl in the next week or so. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Go Pies.